Hi, I'm Carol McClaskey. I own a little quilt business called Cotton Frolic, and we're here at our studio called Star Basin Studios just north of Austin, Texas. A couple of years ago, in a goofy mood on a winter day that rarely ever happens in this part of the world, my husband and I were talking about quilts. I was sewing and he decided to film me, and we made a little video about how easy it is to do paper piecing. You know, a lot of people struggle with it. I have a sister-in-law who's a master seamstress, and she couldn't get it. It's an upside down and backwards and totally convoluted thing to a lot of people, but my great aunt and well, a couple of my great aunts taught me how to quilt when I was little. I didn't even know what I was doing, but I was making a log cabin quilt that was sew and flip and sew and flip. And it's exactly what paper piecing is. It didn't come around until about 40 years after I learned to make those little log cabins. It's always been really easy to me, and so I thought I'd try to do a tutorial about how to do it, and we had a lot of fun and we got a lot of response. I was overwhelmed with the response we got. I'm pretty shy about things like this. My sister-in-law will laugh at that line, but I have this weirdness about sharing what I know because it makes me feel as if I know something somebody else doesn't know, but I understand that this is something that can be hard to get, and once you get it, like algebra, it's a piece of cake. Maybe algebra is harder. So we giggled our way through a video and promised to do more. I promised to do a video right away to show how you finish these off, because that's one of the really things that's really difficult. People will get through the paper piecing part, but then when it comes to the end and trying to sew them together and make the lines match up can be really difficult because they're so small. I work in miniature, and I promise miniature is easier to do than full size. If you want to do full size quilts with paper piecing, you want to start out with miniatures first and get the hang of it, and then you can do bigger ones. So I promised to put some patterns together. I have about 125 little paper piecing patterns that I designed myself, and I promised to do another video right away and real life intervene. We had some serious medical complications. I married a younger man thinking that someday he'd take care of me in my old age, and he fell off a cliff there for a while and had a lot of hospital stays and some worrisome things, but he's filming right now and he's okay. And he's going to stick around for a little while longer, I think.
A long time.
We've been together for 46 years, and for 40 of those years he never even had a cold, and then all of a sudden he had heart problems and a couple of strokes, and we've gotten through it, and the time has come to do what I said I was going to do. So I have a couple of patterns up on Etsy. They've been up there for a while, and I have about 100 little quilts that I put together with new designs, and I just thought I'd make another video first thing and show how to make one. And if you don't want to watch the long video, you can watch the shorter one, and I'll show you how to make each one of the blocks that's in this little quilt. There are three blocks in it. So Jay, if you can show a midnight rainbow, this is the little quilt we're going to work on today. You can make it in a lot of different colorways, and I'll show you a couple of those as we go. And here's the pattern, and the pattern shows the picture of the quilt and all the instructions. I don't know how many pages are here. I think this is about nine or 10 pages. And then the patterns. And the patterns are done in 3 different sizes, in 3-inch and 6-inch. This is the most difficult one. This is the one you want to do second to trying the miniatures. And then 1.5-inch blocks that are the miniatures. These look big to me because I work in micro miniature, and I'll tell you more about that later too. If you'd like to do teeny tiny quilts, I can show you how to do that. So all the patterns are in here in all the sizes, and then you come to the coloring page, and this is, you know, a low-tech way to color in the quilt if you want, and you can even cut these out and rearrange them into different configurations, whatever appeals to you. So I thought I'd start by just showing you the quilt blocks as they are. Here's the one little block here. Let me find the pattern for it. And here's the pattern. So when I sew, I make 16 blocks at a time, and I chain all the blocks. Today I'm just going to do them one at a time so you can see how they're put together, and hopefully this takes the mystery out of it. And if it seems complicated to you still, go back to my first video. We'll link that in the comments here so you can see. But this is the first one, and I'll show you how this is done. When I get ready to, well, because I only quilt in miniature, I cut all of my fabric into 3 or 3.5 inch strips, depending on what I need. But I have drawers full of these strips. I'll show you sometime. I'm a hoarder, just like every other quilt maker. But I cut them into strips, and then I can cut little pieces because that's all I need. So I'm not going to show you the basics of, you know, the beginning of how you do this, but I'll show you how each pattern goes together. Okay, so I'm just going to try to show you how to sew the individual quilt blocks together and not try to teach paper piecing from the beginning for those of you that already have an idea how to do it or know very well how to do it. But if you need to refresh your memory about how this is done, you can go back to my first video, and it'll start at square one and show you how it's done. Okay, so this is our first block. Here it is finished, and I'm just going to make another block that looks exactly like this, and I'll show you some different ones later. So number one is the orange in the middle, so that goes here, and we cover up. You can see that number one is all covered up with that orange.
Yep.
So of course I picked one that's a little bit complicated for the first one, not so complicated. But the next piece, number two, is this black and white stripe. So I'm gonna put Jay and I are fighting for the light here. We're gonna put this on here, and I want to try to get the lines to line up, so when I put it together, just like in clothing, you try to make the lines match.
So what line are you lining them up on right now?
I'm just lining it up so, well,
on the line between 1 and 2?
I'm just trying to find 2 points. I don't want to confuse this, but here, let me see. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find the light here so I can see what I'm doing. What I do is try to go from this point to this point. On every pattern, you'll be able to find a line in your mind. And if you see the line behind there, see the black and white behind it? And I'm just going from that point to that point. And that way I know the little lines all the way down to the point down here are going to be fairly straight. It's not perfect. Part of what makes quilts so appealing are the little imperfections that catch your eye. But in this case, we're doing our best to get the line straight. And you can see the black line there. And it's going from that point to that point.
So we're going to be sewing down the line between 1 and 2.
Right.
And we need to make sure that the edges are
are
lined up so that they'll be able to be sewn on that line.
Yeah. And
okay.
You can see the black and white extends all the way out to the edge here.
Yeah, and that doesn't make any difference if it's bigger.
We'll cut that off later.
Right.
Okay, so let's sew it. And you can go in either direction that you want to go, but we're just sewing between 1 and 2 here. I'm trying as best I can to stay on the line. I'm wearing reading glasses that I'm not used to wearing because my glasses need a new prescription and I've been procrastinating. But
so we're taking that off and cutting it, but
cutting back the thread.
Usually when you do this, you do a chain of them.
Yeah, I chain stitch everything because I'm making them all at once, and doing them individually is a little tedious. I know a lot of people that do big quilts don't chain stitch, and that would drive me crazy. I want to get them done. So, okay, this is something that's basic 101, but in case you haven't done this before, I see a lot of instructions that'll tell you to fold back the paper and use freezer paper and crazy things. You don't have to do that, especially not with miniatures. I've left enough of a seam allowance on the black and white, and I'm just cutting the orange so it matches it. And then we'll fold this over. I'm not going to bother to iron it. I can finger press it on this little tiny thing. And we're going to finger press it out.
So that's on the back side of the pattern right now.
Yeah, it's on the back side, the blank side.
Right.
Okay, so 1 and 2 are on there. So now we're going to do 3. And here's where we're going to try to line up our deals. My light is not great here, so we'll do the best we can. See if I can see it. Okay. Oh my god. There we go. Okay, we're lined up on that corner. In this corner, if I can turn it just a little bit. Oh, why did I pick a stripe? You don't have to do a stripe on this one. You can do any color you want. And then you can sew it on here and you don't have to worry about lines.
So
okay.
Again, we're just trying to get it where they're both covering that line between 1 and 3. So when we sew down that line.
Right. And if this was just a solid color or a print, you could sew this on here however you want. But I made it difficult by using a stripe. So I apologize for that. Don't use a stripe. Okay, so we're going to sew between 2 and 3.
Look cool.
Yeah, they do look cool. My sewing's a little off on this point right at the front because I was fighting the camera here. We're both fighting for the same space.
Sorry.
It's all right. I'm glad you're helping. Yep, do it. There we go. All right. Okay, so here we are again. We'll just trim away the excess. I leave an 1/8 of an inch or so. It doesn't matter if it's perfectly straight. You don't have to worry about all those complications that you worry about with bigger quilts. It's much easier. Okay, let me finger press this open. And there's our point.
So I can see how easy it is to make a nice point there.
Yep, and our lines are pretty close to matching. I didn't have enough light to see. But if you're doing this in your own home, you can have a light on your table like I do, but because Jay's in the way, I can't get any closer. Yeah, sorry. But anyway, the lines, they line up pretty well. Okay, so now here's number 4, and it's this point out here, and we're going to cut off this end with this red. As you can see here, it goes out on the point. I did a better job here than I did there. Look at that. I'm not a perfectionist. Okay, so I always hold the material in my fingers. When I cut the strips, I make them wide enough so that they'll go from edge to edge on this paper, and I can see, and I try to get it straight, although straight of grain is not a big problem with these little quilts. You're not going to be washing them and putting them back on a bed. Mostly they're going to be decorations on the wall or in a dollhouse. So you can see that the red covers that line. We're going to sew the line for the...
And that's all we're going to sew is that one little
bitty piece here.
That one little line.
Yep. And it's just going to change the whole thing. Now, another thing that beginners do or worry about, and in a lot of directions, oh my goodness, I cannot see. Here we go. In a lot of directions that I see, it'll tell you to start and stop right on the line. But you don't have to do that. You're going to be cutting away the excess anyway. So if I started right on that line and ended right on that line, I might lose a stitch or a stitch might come out. But this way, I start way over here. You can overshoot the line is what I'm saying. And I'll show you what happens. See here, we can, that little thread's going to drive me crazy. where we sewed the black and orange, we can tear back to that line that we just sewed there. And if you tear it back to that line, then you can cut the excess out. I should have dragged my little trash can over here. And I need my Kai scissors. Okay, let me put it down here where you can see better. And so straight across here. And look, there's our little point. Every quilt maker just lives for points. Not to cut off the end of the point, and we did a good job there. Okay, so now we're on to number 5. I cut these a little bit thicker because, as you can see, you have a wider area to cover. And this is trial and error. When you first begin, it's really common to cut a thin piece and sew it and fold it, and it doesn't cut it. So it doesn't cover it. So just take it off and do it again. Okay, so I'm looking through the pattern, and I've got hold of the material on both ends of the paper here. And I don't know, can you see it through there? I can see it pretty well, but I don't know if the camera can see it. It looks like you can.
You just have it again lined up so that where you sew, the fabric will be between those two lines.
Yeah, and you have a little bit left over.
Yeah.
To hold on to with your fingers. Okay. So here's this. That never happens. How did that happen? Oh, good. Now you get to watch me try to. Thread my needle with my bad eyes. I never do that. There we go. I have a needle threader on here that I never think to use. Okay. Let me make sure my fabric's still lined up. Yeah, it's a little high there. Okay. Let me get hold of this here. Nope, now it's a little off. Okay, there we go. We're better now. All right, let's start again. Okay, so we're almost done this little block. And I know this felt like it took a long time, but when you chain stitch them, you can get a bunch of them done pretty quickly. Okay, so I'm going to tear this back if it needs to be torn back, that line that we just did. And we'll cut off the excess here. Okay. Finger press this. I brought my little iron down and it's hot, but you don't have a whole lot of room here, so rather than iron it, I'm just finger pressing. Normally I would iron these and make sure they're really flat. The one thing you want to make sure you do with paper piecing is you want to use a dry iron. You don't ever want to use steam. It'll buckle the paper and you'll get a distorted design. Okay, number 6 coming up. Line it up. Make sure it's above the line there. So we got a little seam allowance. And then we'll sew. I have a son-in-law who's a professional photographer. I could ask him, but Jay's fun to do this with. Jay is a sculptor. Any of you that have followed me on Facebook know that we made our living in the ice sculpting business for 30 years. Jay's an internationally award-winning ice sculptor. I made him retire almost 10 years ago, which was probably a mistake because he had his first stroke right after that. But he survived it. He has no residual effect, thank heaven. Okay. Get our little doodads off here. What do you think? Came out okay, right? You're not saying anything.
It looks great.
Oh,
I'm
well,
just showing
you don't...
this one and the other one.
Let's not go over the top. Okay, so now, I won't do this on camera, but you just trim the edges here along your outside line, and your first block is done.
Well, once you trim that so they can see it look squared up.
Uh-oh.
The pattern already has the 1/4 inch
seam allowance.
So when you want to go sew them together.
Yep. I don't have my good scissors down here. It's not one that's cut very well.
Mm.
I know they're here. I just can't find them. Which is not unusual.
I wasn't running with them though.
No, you had nothing to do with the loss of my Kai scissors, but you may pay for it in the end.
You see me with a piece of paper and a
help written on it. Holding it up to the sky. Okay, oops. I'm gonna have to sweep the floor. I'm getting little bits everywhere. Okay, excuse my little blip here. Okay. And it's not exactly flat because it hasn't been pressed.
Right.
But
it should, yeah, it should be pressed, and there it is.
So I could do a video of how I chain stitch. A lot of people don't do that, and I'm amazed by it, but I'll stitch a bunch of them together, 16 usually at a time, and then I go back with my little snips here that make it very easy, and I cut all the string off, and then I flip them all over and cut all the strings off of the other side, wherever they might be.
Well, it makes it much more efficient.
Yeah, it does.
So,
okay, which block should we do next? One of the I think of that as railroad ties for some reason. Want to do that one?
Railroad ties?
Yeah, yeah, like these right here.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pattern number 14. And you'll wonder later why you watched this being done, because this is so simple. But I'm just trying to show you this is another one that whichever way you did this would work. But then 9 and 10 are important, that they're placed the way they are. But the rest of these, I'm just going to put, here's number 1. I'm going to cover number 1. You can see I have plenty of material there to cover. Oops, I'm sorry.
Put it on the, yeah.
Ooh, that wouldn't have worked very well. Okay, there's number 1.
So number 1 is covered up.
Yep. And we're just using a bunch of oranges. I have so much material from 40 years of collecting it that I can go in and pick all this out easily. I have had a lot of requests for kits, and I may try to put some kits together with specific colors, and you know, maybe the patterns that I have up, they will all have a prototype of several prototypes of different colors. So I'll make some kits, and if you want to have a scrappy look, which to me just means all the oranges are different, all the colors, you know, not two pieces of material the same in any one quilt, I can do that pretty easily for you. So, all right, we got 1 and we got 2 lined up. You can't see that very well, but I can feel it with my fingers, and it's above that line.
Just so we're going between 1 and 2.
Yeah, we're going between 1 and 2. Oops. I'm worried about unthreading my machine now. I should have worried about my fingernails. Okay. Alright. Do it. There we go. Golly, I'm nervous. It feels like the first time we did this, it was just a lark, and I never dreamed it was going to end up on YouTube. But now, I'm doing it with intention, and I'm shaking. I'm 73 years old. You'd think there wouldn't be much that could scare me anymore. Okay, so we'll press number 2 open. So 1 and 2 are together. All right, number 3. Let's get something weird right here on the... Okay, I don't know if you're going to be able to see very well because they're all orange.
That's all right.
I can see it, and I can feel it. You'll feel it with your fingers when you're doing this at home.
And you're just going between the 2 and 3.
The 2 and 3. That's right. Oops. Oh wait, no, I'm not. I'm going. What am I? You know what? This is numbered wrong. Oh. No, that's not right.
What?
You know what? It just dawned on me what you're saying. It is probably.
Between 1 and 3. You're not going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're just going to number 3. We're going to cover up number 3 now. That's what we're doing.
Right. But
and it doesn't necessarily go from 2 to 3. But you're right. I can change those numbers. Let's do that.
No, just leave the numbers where they are. You just need to.
We need to cover
this is piece
number 3
number 3.
now. Yeah.
And so.
Yeah.
Where piece number 3 goes to the one previous,
yeah,
which is number 1. So we're going to sew down the line between 1 and 3.
Yeah, it's just a matter of going from piece number 2 to number 3.
Right.
It's not necessarily 2 to 3 side by side.
Right.
Because it's not like that in a lot of the patterns. Because you have to go from over here to over here. Like right here, you're not going from 9 to 10. But 10 that's the 10th piece you sew.
And a lot of times it's important that you follow in this the way they're numbered, because otherwise they won't go together.
Yeah, that's right. You'll end up missing a spot or something.
Well, they won't sew together, some of them.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, just trim it. I never thought about that before. I'm glad you asked that. You said, so you're going from 2 to 3, and I thought, oh, wait a minute.
Nope.
Maybe I'm doing the wrong thing here.
I was confused. No, it was me. It was me that was confused the whole time. You were just fine.
Shh. Stop. I'm trying to be serious.
Yep.
We don't have many serious moments.
Serious business here.
Okay. All right. So number 3 is done. So now we're going to put on number 4. So should we put a darker one in the middle here? No, we got a darker one right next to it. Let's go with a lighter one. Okay. We're putting on piece number 4 here. And I can see that and feel it. I don't know if you could see it. But I think they get the idea.
So 4 butts up to number 2, right?
Yeah.
And so
stop. That's confusing.
It's not confusing.
It's just number 4.
It's just on the paper. We're on number 4.
We're going
have to go to
number 4.
Sew it to the material that's adjacent.
Yes.
That makes perfect sense when you're...
when you repeat it 100,000 times.
That's right.
Okay. Let's trim this one. All right. So, finger iron this one. Finger press, I guess it's called. All right. So number 4, and now we're going to number 5. Number 5. Come on, threads. Whenever I watch somebody sew online, they do it so perfectly, and the threads are always in place, especially on the Janome website. I love you, Janome. How many Janomes do I have?
Oh my God.
Let's see. We have 1.
Don't
2,
even start.
3, and the new one. So I have 4 Janomes.
Yeah, the new one.
Yeah. We went to a quilt festival last year in Houston, which I have done every year since it came into existence. And Jay saw me listening to a presentation by a Janome agent for their newest model, the Continental M17, and I was just admiring the machine. I already have 3 Janomes. He knows that I love them, and we left there being the proud owners of a $20,000 sewing machine, which I have yet to sew on. It's a little above my pay grade.
We got it at the show special.
But we got the show special. That's true, from Conroe Sewing back in Conroe, Texas.
Yep.
Shout out to Conroe. They would be like, who are you now? Okay. I just messed that up. Nope, it's on the right. Okay.
We just got whiplash there.
I'm sorry. I thought I let go of it and dropped it, but I didn't. Yeah, the Janome is the new one, is a monster of a sewing machine, and it has two screens on it, and it has the biggest quilting, or the biggest embroidery hoop in the industry, but I don't know a thing about embroidery. And about a year ago, we live on a little farm, and my brother and sister-in-law moved in their tiny house, and we all live here happily ever after. All 4 grandparents here. And I mentioned to James that I had this machine, and it was going to take me a while to get around to sewing on that machine. I'm going to need one more orange. I'm going to cut this in half because I didn't get enough orange pieces, or I've dropped one somewhere. So here's number 7. It's a little tiny thing, so all I need is a tiny piece of material, about half the size of a dime. So it's on there. Sorry, I'm getting used to you being in my way now, so I'm forgetting that you're filming. Let me know if I go too fast or do anything too abruptly.
No.
Now, look how crooked this is. I'd let go of it with one finger. It doesn't matter. It does not matter on miniature quilts. This is never gonna, you know, the little doll that this covers or the wall that this hangs on is never gonna know that that piece of material is off the bias. And I have some materials that I deliberately sew off the bias, especially stripes and things that I want to make a candy stripe or something. Okay, so I'm breaking the rules here, but these are just little presentation blocks. Normally on a scrappy quilt I wouldn't have the same material on here twice, but since I came up short on one, I'm just going to use the same one here. Okay. I forgot that I have needle up and needle down on this machine. I have a little Janome in the house that I sew on all the time at nighttime. And on that one you have to turn the wheel to bring the needle up, and I forgot I'm working on a better machine here. Okay, almost done with number 2. Oh, I know why I have too few. These are the ones for that block. Now all these little strips some may have sewn farther than the edge of the thing, so I just tear the stitches back. They come out really easily through the paper. And trim the edges. These unsharp scissors are driving me crazy. I'll plan this out better next time, I promise. Okay, number 10, last one. These are really a piece of cake to make. You'll sail through these little railroad track patterns. Okay. So that's 2 blocks out of the 3. Well, I'll have this little pattern on Etsy by the time the video comes out. I'll have it up on Etsy, so if you want to buy the little pattern and you're not sure about sewing it together, I'm just doing a little demonstration for all 3 of the patterns in here so you can see how they go together.
And how do we find you on Etsy? What is it?
It's Cotton Frolic. Cotton Frolic. On Etsy, you can look me up and find all the patterns. You can also put in miniature quilt blocks and it'll come up that way. Remember, the pattern has a 6-inch block in it, so you can make baby quilts, quilts for toddlers. My little grandson has he's 6 years old now. He has a...
Can you cut the sides off so they can see
Yes.
it squared up? And just... So
Think
this
of
is the 1.5 inch, and you have a 3 inch and a 6 inch.
Yeah, and I like to work in 1-inch blocks. I love making these little tiny blocks, and I use it to make jewelry. I use the little tiny ones to make little quilt squares to wear. I should have one on today. And lots of other things for the little tiny ones, especially if you're into doll houses and you want to make tiny little bed quilts. But I will tell you how to reduce the pattern size down. Remind me, Jay, to put that in the pattern so they can make 1-inch blocks if they want. Just a little smaller than this. Okay, there it is.
So there's the square up, and then that's what it looks like on this one finished.
Just finger pressed, so it's a little wobbly. All right, one more.
So we have one more.
And then I'll show you some different colorways.
The one in the middle here.
Yeah, piece of cake.
And that's the pattern?
Yep, this is the pattern, number 18. You don't have to remember any of that. If you like this, all you have to remember is that it's called Midnight Rainbow. And once you get a couple of patterns, then you can mix and match all of them. Okay, so we're just doing number 1. We just need to worry about covering all the points of number 1. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let me put my reading glasses. These are much better to see with. God, I'm getting old. Okay, number 1, and let's get number 2 on here. Almost forgot. Let's do it. I just picked a bunch of reds for this one. Okay, so there's number 2. And although you probably can't see it, I can see the light through it. And I can tell by where my finger is. Right there, you can see it's well beyond that, and it's well beyond the point over here. So I can sew this on. Don't you unthread on me. Two. See if I can do it faster. 1. Okay, number 2 is on there. It's funny how they can look kind of discombobulated and then they all come together at the end. Okay, number 3. And you're just going to see it in the light. I think I do it mostly by my fingers. What the heck am I? What did I do here? There we go. Oh yeah, I meant to say this too. I don't have a walking foot on this sewing machine, but when you sew them together, it's much easier if you have a walking foot. You know, when you get all these little points coming together, it can get pretty thick. And a walking foot really helps pull it all through and helps keep your points lined up. It's important to all of us, I know. And when I'm just sewing them together like this, I grab whatever open-toed, especially a clear, that's just the foot I like. I can see everything. All I have to do is be able to see that line. So I always go with I'm not even sure what this foot is for. It looks like a 1/4 inch measurement on the side, but I just use it because I can see really well through it. Okay, number 4. Sorry, I'm ignoring the camera and just doing it like you're not even here. Oops, hold it. There we go. 4. You know, you film like you follow me in the grocery store, I've noticed.
Yep.
In the grocery store, if I forget something on an aisle and turn back to get it, Jay turns the basket and follows me, and he's right behind me.
Yep.
And I always go, you don't have to follow me. I'm just going to be a second. But he is right on it. Okay. Some days I think about how for 30 years I was raising children, and Jay was an ice sculptor, and he spent long hours in the freezer. That's why he's so well preserved and looks like my son now instead of my husband, but oh well. But I think about all the millions of times I used to go to the grocery store and wish that he was with me. He's a nationally award-winning chef too. That's how he got into ice sculpture. It's a culinary art. And I would go to the store and I'd think, why am I doing all the cooking, and why am I buying all the food, and why can he never go to the store with me? And now we're retired, we go to the store together all the time. And I think about the good old days.
Oh, for those days when I didn't have a...
I long for those days when I could just turn back and get some salad dressing without you running into me from behind. It was a lot cheaper buying groceries when it was just me, that's for sure. I never know what I'm going to end up with, some escargot in the basket or who knows what. We're both chubby little people, though. He's a good cook. Okay. So this is basically like the railroad. I've given it a name now. The railroad block that we just did. You're just adding on both sides, back and forth. And this is all red, but you could make, you know, I make all kinds of little things, like you could do a red and white stripe, that, you know, one red, one white, or a rainbow, which I often do. Anybody that's ever followed anything I do knows how much I love rainbows. Almost done. 2 more little pieces. I'm going to be sweeping up after myself after this. I've got thread going everywhere. You're a chef. Do you also sweep? I'm going to have to get you on the camera.
No, I don't
My
know
little
about that.
Scotch-Irish artist here. I have a great face for radio. And you, on the other hand, are being pursued by movie companies.
Oh, gee whiz. I don't think so.
We'll see how that goes. You'll be able to support me in the condition that I deserved all these years. Oops. Okay, number 7 going on. Oops. I'm thinking about all the thread I'm using. Doing it this way, I usually chain, and so they're just a ½ inch between each one. I went to buy this white thread yesterday. I suddenly realized I was completely out of white thread, which just can't be allowed to happen. And this little cone of thread was $19. I couldn't believe it. So now I'm thinking about using thread judiciously. Okay, so there we have our little fan. And we're going to this black and white dot across the bottom on number 8. The last one. That really threw me for a loop when you said, oh, you're not putting 3 next to 2, it's going next to 1. And I thought, what have I done wrong here? I never thought about it. But you're just going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 8.
have to go and be put on in that order, otherwise.
Well, it's not important on every block, but
No,
but you'll come to know that there's a lot of them that you just have to put in
if you
two
don't
right
put them
after
in
one.
order, you can't get them on there.
Well, it doesn't even make any sense. Nobody makes that mistake because it doesn't make any sense. You'd be sewing one thing over here and one thing over here. It has to cover the edge of the piece you put in before, and that becomes second nature once you get started. That's one of those things that seems so confusing in the beginning, so we don't even really need to talk about it. It's just confusing. Okay, so there's our little fan. And trim it. Trimming was a good idea, Jay. I don't know why I was thinking I didn't need to do that. I wasn't wanting to trim because they're not pressed yet, so they're not exactly flat.
You don't have your good scissors.
I don't have my good scissors. What did I do with them? I had them earlier.
I don't even know.
If you have never used Kai's scissors, I heard about Kai forever, and at the quilt show 3 or 4 years ago I found them, and I bought a professional pair. They're pretty they're a little pricey if you buy the professional ones, but they have regular ones too, and they're all just the most incredible scissors you've ever seen. I've been using them all this time, and they're not the least bit dull yet.
And that's the same one as the ones in the center here.
Yeah. Okay. So here are 3 little blocks in different colors than there are on there. This is the quilt all finished.
And this is the pattern.
Yeah. And I wanted to show you.
And the pattern, when you order it, comes to you as a PDF.
Oh yeah, it's a digital download, so
you can just print out.
You can use it that day.
And you can print out as many copies of the patterns as you need.
Forever and ever, amen.
Obviously, when you print the pattern out, then you cut the pattern up and you use the pattern.
Yeah. Just make copies. All you want. Okay, so I thought you might like to see a couple of other colorways, and I do this all the time. I really have hundreds of these little blocks, and I'll mix and match them like this, but I just grabbed some blocks that are the very same blocks that we just made, and I thought we'd lay one out here just to show you a different colorway. This one has kind of a, I just picked out these red, white, and blue points, which would be perfect for the 4th of July, but the center of this little quilt would make a pretty good Christmas quilt. You could just change the points to be red if you wanted. I'm gonna leave myself enough space here. Oops. There we go. So that's just another colorway. And then one of my favorite things is to pick out one of the blocks that I really like, and I love this little point, and I really love these colors. Look at this color here. Isn't it pretty? This just sings to me. When I do these, a lot of times they're just random colors, and some you'll see that I matched on both sides. But when I make a quilt where everything matches, see those 2 turquoise are the same, that the 2 yellows are the same. There's one in here, where is it? And I'll put in something that has 2 that are different, and your eye goes to it. It gives it some sparkle. I don't understand why, but it does. These here are all just scrappy, you can see, but I just love it when you have the same colors, and then all of a sudden there are 2 that are not quite the same, or this one's very different here. Anyway, so that's the second colorway. And I just saw this little quilt. I have so many little quilts just waiting to be finished. This is a little quilt I made with just all of the little, what I keep calling a railroad block. Isn't it pretty? I love the colors. You can see what it looks like on the back when they're all sewn together. And I'll show you how to do this. This is, it took me 20 years to figure out how to do this perfectly. And I shouldn't say perfectly. We'll find a mistake in here. But see how these line up? That's not easy to do on a big quilt with big blocks. But on a little one, it can be excruciating. And I spent a lot of time, you know, pulling out stitches and starting over, and you know, these can just be really thick, and especially with the paper on the back. But you can see these are sewn together with the paper on the back. And in the next video, I'll do a short video and I'll show you how to do this. So you'll never have to worry about your points not coming together again. Well, maybe once in a while, but not very often. And there's one more little quilt. I just love this little quilt. I've made a couple of these. I made one and I donated it. But this little One Love quilt is, I made a couple of these that went to charities, and I made another one. This one's for me if I ever get it done. But I don't know how many blocks are in there, a couple of hundred little heart blocks. But I love the effect of taking one block and just using it again and again and again, and then changing the colors as you go. So yeah, that's one of my favorites. So just before we go, I pulled this out today. This is a dog collar that I made for my dog. I have lots of dogs, but this was one very special dog, and he's gone now. But I made this with all hand-dyed fabric that I made myself, and I'll show how I did this. It's kind of a slip cover for a dog collar. And you can take it off and wash it, and you can see this has been washed 1,000 times. Jay told me one day I should wear it myself. And if it pulled my chin up, I would totally. If you see me wearing a dog collar around, just don't say a word.
I like the other one with the unfinished edge on it better.
Oh, I know. I don't have that down here. I made one, and on the edges, I just left it roughly. I didn't finish off the edge, and so all the little excess, I didn't trim it off, in other words. And then I threw it in the washer, and it's just a yeah, that probably covers up to about here, so that's a good deal. Anyway, thank you for watching. This has been fun. For my friend Heidi, I have known Heidi for, oh God, Heidi, 25 years on the internet. We watched each other's children grow up. I watched her become a teacher. She's an art teacher and a beloved art teacher, and she loves what she does. But I just saw where you wrote on the video that I put up that you had never heard my voice before, and my voice sounds so odd to me when I hear it recorded, just like everybody, I guess. But I love you. I really do, and I'm glad that we've been together all these years, even though we've never met in person. I'm going to put up a lot of videos. You'll be sick of my voice. But I'll talk to all of you soon. Up again soon with another one. Thanks so much.
Yay! Just a little sneak peek of Carol's studio here, Star Basin Studios. Oh my goodness. I'll have to tell the story about it. You can't see it very well from here. Yeah, well, it's just a peek.
It's just a peek. I'll do a video about my studio when I get finished. We'll do that. It's pretty exciting.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks.